Hey, you, and welcome back to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
So you set us down a really fascinating rabbit hole this time. It's all about sound.
Yeah, specifically white noise, pink noise,
Hmm.
how they might help with, focus and sensory overload too.
Exactly, that feeling of just being overwhelmed by everything. So our mission today, really dig into the science, figure out if these color noises could actually, well, help concentration, maybe bring a bit more calm.
It's a good mission. We've got some interesting studies, some theories to unpack, how these sounds work, how they interact with our brains, especially for folks who experience things a bit differently.
And, this topic, it's personal for me. My daughter has ADHD and, well, navigating focus, sensory stuff. It's been a journey.
Right.
And we see related things too, like dyslexia, dyscalculia.
Yeah.
Other learning differences often overlap. So the idea that simple sound could help, I'm really keen to get into that.
Absolutely. And just for anyone maybe new to this idea, these color noises, they're basically steady background sounds, different frequency mixes. And the thinking is they can block out those sudden, jarring noises that wreck focus or just make you feel overloaded.
Okay, so let's start with the basics then. White noise, pink noise. I think I've even heard of brown noise. What are they? Like, paint us a sound picture.
Okay, yeah. Imagine, the full range of sounds we can possibly hear. Low bass rumbles up to high-pitched hisses.
Uh-huh.
White noise is basically all those frequencies playing at once, pretty much at the same intensity, the same volume.
So like full on.
Yeah, full spectrum sound. The
Yeah.
classic example is that static, from an old analog TV when there was no signal. That shh sound.
Yeah, I remember that. Or maybe like a fan. Steady whoosh.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's white noise, a very even, full sound.
Got it. Okay, so what about pink noise then? How's that different?
Pink noise is similar. It also has a wide range of frequencies, but here's the twist. The lower frequencies, the bass sounds, they're a bit louder, more powerful than the higher ones.
Ah, okay.
So it sounds, deeper, maybe richer. A lot of people find it more soothing. Think of light rainfall.
Yeah. Or leaves rustling maybe.
That's a great example too. It's less hissy than white noise, more of a gentle roar or whoosh, but with more bottom end.
So less sharp, more full-bodied. Is that a way to put it?
That's a good way to think about it. And then brown noise takes that even further.
Okay.
It really emphasizes the lowest frequencies. So think deep rumbling thunder in the distance.
Wow.
Or maybe strong ocean waves, like during a storm. That deep roar, it's got way more bass than pink noise.
Okay, that makes sense. White is everything equal. Pink boosts the lows a bit. Brown boosts them a lot.
You got it. And it's really interesting how people react differently. Some love white noise for blocking things out. Others find pink much more calming. Some need that deep brown sound. It's very individual.
That makes total sense.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so let's connect this back to focus. How can these sounds actually help someone, trying to concentrate, like me, trying to write this script with kids running around?
Haha. Yeah, well, the main mechanism is that consistent background sound we talked about.
Right, the masking effect.
Exactly. It creates this steady sound layer that helps drown out or at least lessen the impact of those sudden noises. A phone notification, someone dropping something, a snippet of conversation.
The focus killers.
Precisely. Those things that just grab your attention instantly. And for someone with ADHD who might already have difficulty filtering out external stuff,
Yeah.
reducing those sudden distractions can be a huge help. It makes the sound environment more predictable, less jarring.
Okay, that part makes intuitive sense.
Yeah.
But you mentioned another theory too, something about engaging the brain.
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting, especially for ADHD. There's a theory that these steady sounds might actually, stimulate the brain in a helpful way, possibly by encouraging dopamine production.
Dopamine, okay, I know that's important for focus and motivation.
Crucial. It helps brain cells communicate effectively. So the idea is, for someone with ADHD who might naturally have lower dopamine activity in certain brain pathways, a moderate, constant background noise might provide just enough stimulation to gently nudge dopamine release. And that, in turn, could improve attention.
So it's like the brain needs a little bit of gentle busyness in the background to help the main focus circuits work better. Is that kind of it?
That's a great way to put it. It's almost like giving one part of your brain a simple, steady job to do,
Okay.
which then frees up the other parts to concentrate on the main task. You know the analogy of doodling?
Oh yeah, like drawing in the margins during a meeting.
Exactly. For some people, that little bit of unfocused activity actually helps them stay focused on the meeting itself. It occupies a restless part of the brain just enough. Color noise might be doing something similar auditorily. Giving that easily distracted part of the brain something consistent to process so it doesn't go looking for bigger, more disruptive stimuli.
That's a fantastic analogy. I totally get that. Okay, so what about sleep? That's another big one, right? Especially with ADHD, sleep problems are really common.
Definitely. Sleep issues and ADHD often go hand in hand. And again, the masking effect is key here.
Right. Blocking out the neighbor's dog.
Yeah.
The creaky floorboards.
Exactly. Those sudden sounds that jolt you awake. A consistent sound buffer, like white or pink noise, can smooth those over, make them less likely to disrupt your sleep cycle.
Creates a more stable sound environment for sleeping. Makes sense.
But there might be more to it, again, particularly thinking about ADHD. The constant stimulation, even though it's gentle,
Yeah.
it might actually help soothe some of that internal restlessness or anxiety, the racing thoughts that keep people awake.
Oh, absolutely. The brain just won't shut off sometimes.
Right. So that steady hum or gentle patter might provide a sort of calming anchor, helping to quiet that mental chatter and allow the brain to actually wind down and drift off.
That would be huge. Because we all know bad sleep equals bad focus the next day. It's a cycle.
It really is.
Okay, so let's get into the science. You mentioned some studies. What does the actual research say? Is this just theory or is there evidence?
There is evidence, yeah. Some quite compelling stuff. For example, there was a study back in 2022 published in the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health.
Okay.
They looked specifically at preschoolers diagnosed with ADHD, and they found that white noise actually seemed to help. It improved their attention spans, reduced hyperactive behaviors when the noise was playing.
Wow, for preschoolers, that's really significant for parents.
It is. But here's the crucial flip side. The same study found that for the preschools without ADHD,
Yeah.
the white noise sometimes had a negative effect. It actually seemed to hinder their attention a bit.
Whoa. Okay, that's huge. So it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all thing. It depends on your brain wiring.
Precisely. It really highlights how individual our responses to sound are. What helps one person might actually hinder another.
That's such an important caveat. What about sleep research?
There's research there too. A 2017 study, this one in Frontiers in Neurology, looked at people with short-term insomnia. They found that using white noise significantly cut down the time it took for these participants to fall asleep.
So it helps them drift off faster. That's good evidence.
Yeah. And there's this interesting theory called stochastic resonance that might explain why this works, especially maybe for ADHD.
Stochastic resonance. Okay, break that down for me.
Basically, it's the idea that sometimes adding a bit of random noise to a system can actually make it better at detecting a weak signal.
Huh. Adding noise makes things clear. That sounds backwards.
It does seem counterintuitive.
Yeah.
But imagine your brain needs a certain level of background activity to function optimally. For someone with ADHD, maybe their baseline internal noise level is a bit low.
Okay.
So they get easily distracted by external things. Adding controlled external noise, like white noise, might actually raise their internal activity to a more optimal level, making it easier to filter out distractions and focus on the important signal, whatever task they're doing.
Wow, okay. Like tuning a radio. Sometimes a little static helps you find the station.
That's not a bad analogy, yeah. It's about optimizing the signal-to-noise ratio within the brain itself. And again, dopamine likely plays a role here.
Right, back to dopamine.
That moderate, constant sound might be just enough to stimulate dopamine release, improving focus, working memory, things often challenging in ADHD.
But for someone without ADHD, whose dopamine levels might already be in the optimal range.
Exactly. That extra stimulation from the white noise could push them past the optimal point, becoming overstimulating and actually hurting their performance, which is what that preschooler study hinted at.
It really is a delicate balance then.
Uh,
Fascinating. Now, you also mentioned an OHSU study, Oregon Health and Science University.
Yes, that one was quite recent, published in the Journal of the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. They did a big review, looking at lots of previous studies.
Okay, what did they find overall?
They looked at kids and also college students with ADHD or significant ADHD symptoms. And their findings basically backed up the other research. They saw a small but statistically significant improvement in how well these individuals performed tasks when they were listening to white or pink noise.
Small but significant, that's still important, especially if it's easy to implement.
Absolutely. A small boost can make a big difference in daily functioning.
Yeah.
And consistent with the other findings.
Let me guess. It wasn't helpful for those without ADHD.
You got it. They also observed a slight decrease in cognitive performance for the individuals who didn't have ADHD symptoms when exposed to the noise.
Okay.
So the OHSU researchers concluded it points towards white or pink noise being a potentially useful, low-cost, low-risk intervention specifically for those with ADHD.
Low cost and low risk. Those are definitely big pluses when you're looking for support strategies.
Huge advantages. It's inexpensive to try at home, and the direct side effects seem minimal, unlike some other interventions. It could potentially complement things like medication or therapy.
So it could be part of a toolkit, not necessarily a replacement for other things.
Exactly. But, and this is a big but, we have to talk about the caveats, the limitations.
Right. Always important to have the full picture. What do we need to be careful about?
Well, first and foremost, it's not magic. It's not a cure for ADHD or sensory issues. It might be a helpful tool for some people, but it's just one potential piece of the puzzle.
Interesting. Good reminder. It's a support, not a solution on its own.
And the researchers themselves emphasized we need way more research before we could say, okay, white noise should be standard therapy for ADHD. We're not there yet.
Still early days in understanding it fully.
Definitely. And we've hit this point already, but it bears repeating. People react so differently to noise. What helps you might drive me crazy.
Totally.
Plus, we don't really know the ideal dose, what's the best volume level, how long should someone listen for. We need more data on that.
The specifics are still fuzzy.
Yeah. And think about shared spaces, classrooms, open offices.
Oh yeah, big problem. If it helps one kid with ADHD but distracts 5 others.
Exactly. That potential negative impact on non-ADHD individuals is a real practical concern. Headphones might be necessary, but then...
Then you worry about volume levels, hearing damage.
Precisely. Especially with kids and teens using headphones for hours, potentially. Volume needs careful monitoring. That's a real risk we have to consider.
And long-term effects. Do we know anything about listening to this stuff constantly, especially for developing brains?
We don't really. That's another area needing more research. What are the long-term impacts on attention development if kids are using this frequently? Still an unknown.
So potential benefits, but also potential risks, and lots of unknowns.
Exactly. And one final point, the OHSU team made, a lot of the studies so far haven't used very diverse groups of people. We need studies with larger samples that include people from different racial and ethnic backgrounds to make sure the findings apply more broadly.
That's crucial. We need research that reflects everyone.
Absolutely. So promising leads, but definitely more questions than answers right now.
Okay, so with all those caveats in mind, if someone listening is curious, how could they practically experiment with this? How might you, listening at home, try this out?
Well, the simplest way is just to try it. Pick a task that needs focus, maybe writing, reading, studying, brainstorming. Put on some white noise. You can find tracks easily online. See if you notice a difference. Does it feel easier to tune out distractions? Do you stay on task longer?
And maybe try pink noise too. See if that feels different.
Definitely. Try both white and pink. See which one, if either, feels better for you for focused tasks. Maybe pink noise feels calmer, less intense.
What about for sleep?
Same idea. Try playing pink noise. It's often preferred for sleep because it's a bit softer sounding as you're getting ready for bed.
Okay.
See if it helps you unwind, fall asleep faster, maybe track how rested you feel in the morning. It's all about personal experimentation.
Now, you pointed us towards a specific resource mentioned in the materials, right? Motivate Lounge on YouTube.
Yeah, that came up in the sources you shared. It was mentioned as a place to find really long tracks of white and pink noise.
Convenient so you don't have to keep restarting it.
Exactly. You can just press play and let it run for hours if needed, whether for work or sleep. I'm sure there are other apps and sites too, but that one was specifically named.
Good to know. So if you're out there struggling with concentration or feeling overwhelmed by noise, giving white or pink noise a shot seems like a pretty low barrier thing to try.
It really is. As the source material suggested, it might be worth exploring to see if it helps unlock a bit more focus or productivity for you.
And it's worth remembering, there's just one tool. That Psychology Today article you sent also mentioned other things for managing ADHD, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's usually about a combination of strategies. They mention things we often hear about. Regular exercise, mindfulness, or meditation. Trying not to multitask, adding structure to your day, being mindful of music. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it distracts.
Right.
Getting enough sleep, which loops back to maybe using noise for sleep, watching your diet. And even interestingly, things like cold showers were mentioned as potentially helpful.
Wow, okay, so Lots of avenues to explore.
Absolutely. It's about finding what works for your unique brain and lifestyle.
So, wrapping this all up, what's the key takeaway for everyone listening to our deep dive today?
I think the main thing is that these color noises, white and pink specifically, show real promise. They seem to be pretty accessible tools that might help improve focus and maybe even sleep, especially it seems for folks with ADHD.
By masking sounds and maybe even nudging brain activity like dopamine levels?
That seems to be the theory, yeah. But the other huge takeaway is it's personal.
Right. What works for one person might not work for another, or might even be annoying.
Exactly. So the only real way to know if it could help you is to give it a try. Experiment. See how it affects your focus, your calm, your sleep.
Okay, so here's a final thought for you to chew on. How aware are you, really, of your sound environment? How is the noise around you affecting your focus, your mood, your well-being day to day? Maybe this week, try paying closer attention. And perhaps check out some of those resources. Experiment a little with white or pink noise. You never know. You might find a simple tool that makes a real difference for you, or maybe for someone you care about.
Well said.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Thank you for joining us for our Coffee Shop Chat podcast. Please click like and subscribe to Motivate Lounge to help us bring you more inspiring, educational, and uplifting content.